The courthouse cafeteria went quiet when my son-in-law knocked the tray out of my hands, sending my lunch across the floor in front of everyone. "Watch where you're standing, old man," he snapped, not even looking back as he walked away. My daughter looked at the ground and said nothing. I bent down, picked up the pieces, and said nothing either. 40 minutes later, the bailiff called the courtroom to order, and Marcus Reed turned pale when he saw exactly whose courtroom he'd walked into. Before I go further, I want to say thank you for being here with me. If you're new to this porch, pull up a chair. And one thing worth mentioning, this story contains fictional elements built for the sake of telling it right. Names, places, all of it invented. But the truth underneath it is real, and it's one worth sitting with. I want to tell you about the year I learned that love, when it's real, doesn't need an audience. It was late September in Charleston, one of those evenings when the humidity finally breaks and the air smells like salt and cut grass at the same time. I'd spent the whole day getting the house ready, smoked a pork shoulder the way my wife Dorothy used to do it, snapped green beans by hand, made her buttermilk pie, because my daughter Rachel had loved it since she was 8. Rachel had called that morning, voice light, a little too fast. "Dad, I want you to meet somebody important. We're coming by tonight, if that's okay." Of course it was okay. It was always okay. I set the table with Dorothy's china, folded the napkins the way she taught me, put candles out even though I felt foolish doing it alone in an empty house. I was 66 years old, retired off the bench 2 years, and I was lighting candles because my daughter was bringing a man home. My chest hadn't felt that full in a long while. They arrived a little after 7. Rachel looked lovely, hair down, wearing a green dress I didn't recognize, smiling the way she used to when she was small, and everything was still simple. Beside her stood Marcus Reed, tall, early 40s, wearing a suit that cost more than my monthly pension, with the kind of walk that expects a room to rearrange itself around him. His eyes moved across my living room, quick and clinical, the way an appraiser looks at a house he's already decided isn't worth much. "Huh," he said, taking it in. "Cozy. Real cozy." He glanced at Rachel. "I didn't picture you growing up somewhere like this." Rachel's smile flickered. "Dad built this house with his own hands, Marcus." "Sure, he said, still looking around, touching nothing. "It's got character." I stepped forward, put my hand out. "Walter Bishop. Good to finally meet you, son." He shook it firm, brief, already checking his phone before he'd let go. "Marcus Reed." We sat down to eat. I served the pork, the beans, the cornbread I'd baked that afternoon. Marcus looked at his plate the way a man looks at something he never ordered. "I don't really do home cooking," he said, cutting one piece and setting the fork down. "Too much sodium, too much fat. Rachel, you know I prefer to keep things clean." My daughter's face went red. "Marcus, it's fine, really." He was already on his phone. "I'll just get something delivered. There's a decent sushi place a few miles from here." He ordered food to my table, in my house, while I sat across from him with a meal I'd spent 5 hours on. I kept eating anyway. I asked him what he did. "Corporate attorney," he told me. "One of the top litigators in the state," he added without being asked. I asked how he and Rachel met. He gave me 4 words and turned back to his phone to discuss a closing dinner Thursday. After the meal, of which Marcus ate maybe 3 bites of the delivery he'd ordered, they moved to the living room, and I started clearing plates. Through the doorway, I could hear him. "You've lived in this same house 40 years and never once thought about upgrading?" His voice carried easy, flat, like he was commenting on weather. "That's either admirable or it's sad. Genuinely can't decide which." My hands tightened around the edge of Dorothy's good plate. Rachel murmured something I couldn't catch. "I'm just being honest." Marcus continued. "First impressions matter, and this place says a lot." I washed the dishes slow, the way Dorothy taught me: rinse, soap, rinse again. Let the hot water do the work. When they left, Rachel hugged me at the door long and tight, her chin against my shoulder like she was 7 years old again. "Thank you for dinner, Daddy. It really was wonderful. Drive safe, baby." Marcus shook my hand at the threshold, that same brief grip, and glanced once more back into the living room, at the worn couch, the photographs on the wall, the whole quiet life Dorothy and I had built there, and something crossed his face. Not quite contempt, closer to indifference, the way you'd look at something that simply doesn't concern you. "Good meeting you, Walter." he said. He hadn't called me anything all night. Not sir, not Mr. Bishop. Now, on the way out, he used my first name the way you'd address a man parking your car. I watched their taillights disappear down the road, went back inside, wrapped the buttermilk pie Marcus never touched, and sat at the table with coffee gone cold, thinking about the way his smile never once reached his eyes. Not one time in 3 hours. I told myself I was wrong. I told myself that for 2 years, right up until the Sunday calls stopped coming. They say distance gets measured in miles. I learned it gets measured in missed calls. That first year, Rachel called every Sunday, noon, like clockwork. We talked about her floral design business, the Charleston weather, the roses her mother planted before she got sick. Small, ordinary things that felt like home, even through a phone line. Somewhere in year 2, noon became evening. Evening became a text. Busy today. Talk soon. Love you. Soon never came. I started keeping a record-old habit from the bench. When something doesn't add up, you write it down. Bought a small notebook with a green cover and logged every call. Date, time, how long, a line about what we discussed. First 6 months of year 2, 14 calls. By the second 6 months, 5 calls, average 3 minutes. One October Sunday, I dialed her number and a man's voice answered instead. Smooth, unbothered. She's tied up, Marcus said. Being a wife and a mother, Walter, that's a full-time job. One you'd probably understand better if you'd been around more when she was a kid. My jaw locked. I raised her by myself after her mother passed. She's fine, he said, quieter now. You don't need to check on her like she's still 12. The line went dead. The invitations stopped next. For 2 years, I'd been asked to holidays, stiff ones where Marcus talked over me and I sat in a corner. But at least I was there. Then a Thanksgiving text. Doing something small this year, just us 3. Hope you have a good one. The anniversary of Dorothy's passing came in October. I bought white lilies, her favorite, set them on the table where she used to sit, expected Rachel by 2 like every year before. By 4, I called. Oh, Daddy. Her voice sank. I'm so sorry. Marcus had a client thing come up and I had to go. It's all right. I'll make it up to you. I promise. She never did. That December, I drove across town with a gift, a silver locket engraved with her name and her mother's birthday. 2 dates that mattered pressed onto one thin chain. I rang the bell. Marcus opened the door in his shirt sleeves. Walter, he said. Not a greeting. An identification. I wanted to drop this off for Rachel. She's putting the baby down. Not really a good time. He took the bag from my hand and shut the door before I finished my sentence. I stood on that porch a long moment, then walked back to my car. 2 weeks later, I asked if she'd gotten it. Oh yes, a half second too long. It's gorgeous, Daddy. I love it. Are you wearing it? A pause, saving it for something special. I didn't push. I wrote it down. The call that cracked something open came on an ordinary Tuesday. Rachel rang unexpected, which already meant something. Her voice thin like she was holding it carefully so it wouldn't break. Dad, can I ask you something? When it was just you and me, growing up, were you happy? Actually happy? My throat tightened. Some of the best years of my life, baby. Why are you asking me that? No reason. Just been thinking. Thinking what? A shaky breath. Sometimes I feel like I'm living somebody else's life, and I don't remember when I stopped living mine. Rachel. My voice came out lower than I meant. Talk to me. I'm fine, Dad. I have to go get Nora from daycare. I'll call you this weekend. She didn't call. I sat at my kitchen table that night and opened the green notebook, read back 2 years of dates and durations and short summaries, the way I used to read case files, looking for the pattern underneath the facts. And there it was, plain as a verdict. This wasn't my daughter drifting. Somebody was pulling the rope. He invited me for Christmas that year, which should have told me everything, because an invitation from Marcus Reed never came free. Rachel made the call herself, sounding almost apologetic. Marcus thought it'd be nice to have you over. We're hosting some people from his firm. It's kind of a big party. I wore my good Navy suit, the one from Dorothy's funeral, polished my shoes, brought a bottle of bourbon, and a wrapped gift for Nora, my granddaughter, who'd just turned 4 and whom I'd met exactly twice. Their house sat in one of those neighborhoods where every lawn looks hired and every car costs more than a mortgage. Lit up like a hotel's string lights, a wreath the size of a truck tire. A caterer I didn't know let me in. Inside, 40 people at least, lawyers and their spouses, loud laughter, the smell of money, the way you smell cologne before you see the man wearing it. Marcus spotted me and crossed over with a glass of scotch, that practiced smile deployed like a tool. "Walter, glad you made it." He gripped my shoulder positioning, not welcoming, and turned to a broad man beside him. "Dale, this is Rachel's father, retired. Did something in insurance, I think." A little laugh, the kind that invites others to join in. Dale smiled politely. Dale was managing partner at one of the biggest firms in the state. I shook his hand, said my name, and before Dale could answer, Marcus was already pulling him away. "Dale, you gotta hear about this settlement Anthony closed last month." And just like that, I was standing alone in the middle of my own daughter's Christmas party, holding a bottle nobody had bothered to take from me. I found a spot by the fireplace. 40 years on the bench teaches you to watch before you speak. 15 minutes in, I heard her. "Grandpa." Nora came running across the floor in reindeer pajamas, arms out, grinning the way only 4-year-olds can. She hit me full speed and I caught her, and something in my chest that had felt like stone all evening cracked open. "Well, hello there." My voice came rougher than I meant it to. "Did you bring me something?" she demanded. I laughed. A real one, first of the night. I carried her to a chair by the window, away from the noise, and for 20 minutes the party disappeared. She told me about a cat she'd seen and named in her head, about how tall the Christmas tree was. Then Marcus appeared. "Nora, come on, Mom needs you." His voice cut clean through her story like a blade through paper. "But I'm talking to Grandpa," she said. "Nora." She slid down, waved, trotted off after him. He didn't look at me once. Just before they turned the corner, he leaned down and said something in her ear. She didn't look back again. I sat in that chair while the party moved around me, noticed the bourbon still sealed on the counter, the wrapped gift for Nora nowhere to be found. I looked across the room and found Rachel's eyes for 1 second before something crossed her face, not guilt exactly, closer to grief. And then Marcus appeared at her elbow, and her attention snapped back like a rubber band released. I got my coat. Nobody noticed me leave. There's a particular kind of pain in standing at your own daughter's door like a stranger. I learned it by heart that winter, 4 years into her marriage, when I drove across town with a birthday gift for Nora, a hand-carved wooden duck with legs that actually moved, wrapped in yellow paper because Rachel had mentioned once, months back, that it was Nora's favorite color, and I'd written it down because that's the kind of father I'd become. I pressed the intercom at the gate. A pause. Marcus's voice, flat and bored. "Who is it?" "It's Walter. Brought something for Nora's birthday." Longer pause. "We're not really doing visitors today." "It's her birthday, Marcus. I'm not a visitor. I'm her grandfather. She's got everything she needs." No anger in it. That was almost worse. The voice of a man simply stating a fact about the weather. "We don't really need second-hand gifts wrapped in dollar store paper." The intercom clicked dead. The gate didn't open. I stood on that sidewalk holding a wooden duck for a long moment, then set it down at the gate, stood back up, and for the first time did something I hadn't done before, pressed the button again. "Marcus, I'm not leaving until you tell her I was here." Silence. Then the speaker crackled and died. I sent Rachel 3 words by text. "I came today." No reply. But I needed her to know I hadn't stopped trying. I drove home, sat in the driveway a while, looking at the dogwood tree Dorothy had planted the spring before she got sick, still stubbornly blooming every year like she'd left instructions. Inside, I opened the green notebook and wrote the date. Then, gate closed, gift left outside. Such a small line for such a large thing. I pressed 2 fingers to the bridge of my nose and breathed through it. Dorothy used to say I processed everything like I was writing an opinion, analyze first, feel later, if ever. She was right. So I did what I always did. I picked up the pen and wrote 4 more words. She didn't choose this, then 4 more. This was done to her. I went back 3 days later without calling, telling myself I was just driving through the neighborhood. I parked 2 houses down and walked up the side yard toward the kitchen window, cracked open a few inches for the air conditioning, meaning only to knock at the front, when Marcus's voice came through the gap like a blade through silk. If you see your father one more time without clearing it with me first, I will have my lawyer drafting papers by morning. Do you understand me? I stopped walking, Rachel's voice trembling at the edges. Marcus, he's my father. He's Nora's grandfather. You can't just what? Footsteps on hardwood. You think a family court is going to hand Nora to a woman with no income of her own, whose father is some bitter old man who can't let go? Try me. I teach piano lessons, Marcus. I have my own. You make $40 an hour when a parent doesn't cancel. Without me, you have nothing that holds up in a courtroom. So next time you feel like running to Daddy, think about what it costs, Nora. Her voice broke on the next word, small and swallowed. That's not fair. Life isn't fair. A door somewhere inside. Dinner's at 7. Don't be late. His footsteps retreated. A moment later, one sharp sound from Rachel, quickly stifled, the kind you make when your body betrays you for a single second. I stood with my back against that wall, every year of the last 4 rearranging itself in my chest. She hadn't been pulling away from me. She'd been protecting Nora. Every unreturned call, every closed door, every rehearsed, "I'm fine." She'd been calculating daily what it would cost her daughter if she didn't. I couldn't knock. If I walked through that door, Marcus would have exactly what he needed, proof she'd made contact behind his back. I'd make it worse. So I walked back to my car, and that night, for the first time in 3 years, I opened the bottom desk drawer and found an old business card. Family law attorney, an old friend from my bench years. Priscilla, I said when she answered, I need to ask you something hypothetically. Walter Bishop, it's been years. What's on your mind? If a woman wanted out of a marriage and her husband controlled every account, every asset, and was using custody as a weapon, what would her options look like? A thoughtful pause. Hypothetically, she'd need documentation, evidence of financial control, any threats on record, and she'd need someone to front the legal costs, because if he controls the money, she can't fight without outside support. And if she was too afraid to take it, then she'd have to reach the point where the fear of staying finally outweighs the fear of leaving. A beat. Walter, is this really hypothetical? I'll call you back when it isn't, I said, and hung up. I found out what Marcus was really capable of the way I found out most things that year alone with the morning paper. A Tuesday in spring, 3 weeks after that window, the Charleston Post-Courier, below the fold, prominent litigator, takes Harmon case. I read the name twice, Marcus Reed. Beneath it, the details. Gregory Harmon, 54, CEO of a regional shipping company, had been driving home from a company dinner 3 weeks earlier when his blood alcohol tested at 19, more than double the legal limit. He'd run a red light at 55 miles an hour and struck a sedan driven by a 31-year-old nurse named Angela Cole. Angela died at the scene. Her 9-year-old son, asleep in the back seat, was airlifted out with a fractured spine. I read that paragraph 3 times. A 9-year-old boy, a fractured spine, and his mother dead on a Tuesday night because a man with a 19 decided he was fine to drive. Vehicular homicide under South Carolina law, a felony carrying up to 25 years. The evidence, from what I could read between the lines, was overwhelming. And Marcus Reed had just announced he was taking the defense. I called Delbert Watts that afternoon, a retired investigator I'd known since my first years on the bench, the kind of man who knew where every body in this city's legal world was buried. You see the Harmon case? Saw it. What do you want to know? How dirty is Marcus Reed going to get? A pause, the kind where a man decides how much to say. Harmon called Reed from the scene. Within 8 minutes, before the paramedics had the boy stabilized, Reed showed up before police finished processing. And the truck's data recorder? Funny you ask. Harmon's people are saying the system malfunctioned. Data corrupted, nothing recoverable. Convenient. Very. And I'm hearing $3 million in legal fees. Reed's making a 19 and a dead nurse disappear for $3 million. He can't make it disappear. No, but he can drag it 18 months through depositions, while that boy's still learning to walk again. He just needs the jury to wonder. Wondering's all he needs. 4 days later, Delbert called again. Found out more about the truck. Reed had Harmon's assistant submit it for a routine technical inspection, but the specific instruction was to delay the data pull request from investigators until Reed gave the go-ahead. Under state law, once a lawyer notifies investigators he's representing the client, certain evidence requests have to run through him. Reed used that window. I sat down on my back steps, the low afternoon sun cutting long across the yard. Tampering with evidence in a case involving a death is a felony, Delbert. He didn't cross that line. He bent it till it was unrecognizable, then pointed at the shape and called it straight. He paused. There's more. You see this morning's piece? Some freelancers running a story questioning Angela Cole's driving history. Sources trace back to a small investigation outfit that does a lot of work for defense firms. He's smearing a dead woman. Can't prove it in court. What I can tell you is, Angela Cole had one parking ticket in 14 years of driving. That's her whole record. The burning came back behind my eyes. I thought about her son in a hospital bed, reading a headline that turned his dead mother into someone who might have deserved it. People are buying it, Delbert said, tired. Comments online already saying maybe she was speeding too. Once the question's planted, it grows on its own. Reed doesn't need to win the argument. He just needs to muddy the water. I found out what happened inside that house from the only witness who ever told me the truth without being asked. Nora was 8 by the time she put words to it. We were on my back porch on a Saturday, eating buttermilk pie, and she said it the way children say hard things, not as confession, just as fact, the way you'd mention the weather. Mom was crying that night, the one before Daddy stopped coming home. My chest went still. Which night, sweetheart? The one where she found the thing on his computer. She pressed her fork into the pie, not eating, just pressing. She was looking for something to print for school, and then she got real quiet, and then she started crying, and then Daddy came home and he was really loud. That's how I know what happened. Not because I was there, because an 8-year-old told me, in the careful way children describe things they witnessed but don't yet have the language for. What Rachel found was an email thread Marcus had left open, the kind of mistake a man makes when he's been careful so long he stops believing he needs to be. Between Marcus and the investigation firm, find anything negative on Angela Cole, driving record, finances, anything. The response, records clean, 1 parking ticket. Marcus's reply, then we build context. People believe what they read. Make it sound credible. Rachel printed it. According to Nora, her mother was at the kitchen table with the pages in her hands when Marcus walked in. She asked him what it was. Nora said, and she was already crying. He got real mad. He said she had no right going through his things. Said she didn't understand how any of it worked. He said, she paused, working through the memory. He said something about her being nothing without him. And Mom said she found out what he did to that family. And he said that family wasn't their problem. And then he said something about keeping the family together, and his voice got real quiet, and that's the part that scared me. It's okay, I said softly. You don't have to. He hit her, Nora said. Flat, matter of fact. The way a child says something they've turned over so many times it's worn smooth. I was on the stairs. I saw it. I set my fork down very carefully because my hands had started shaking. An 8-year-old on the stairs, watching her father hit her mother. After that night, I asked, did your mom seem okay? She didn't cry where I could see, but her eyes were puffy in the mornings, and she hugged me longer before school. She looked up at me with Rachel's eyes exactly. Grandpa, was Daddy a bad man? Your daddy made some very bad choices, I told her. That's different from being a bad man, but the difference matters less when the choices hurt the people you love. She considered that with the seriousness only children bring to grown-up answers, then went back to her pie. Rachel called the next morning, early, her voice thin and careful, like she was holding it in both hands so it wouldn't spill. Dad, I miss you. She didn't tell me what had happened. She didn't have to. I learned later she'd sat on those printed pages 2 weeks, afraid to go to the police without money of her own, afraid to call a lawyer she couldn't pay, afraid that moving too soon would cost her Nora. Fear like that doesn't make you weak, it makes you careful. She was waiting for a door to open. When that door finally cracked, it wouldn't be me who opened it. Before I tell you what happened next, I need to know you're still with me, because what I decided to do changed everything. Not just for Marcus, for all of us. If you've made it this far, drop the number 7 in the comments below. Just the number. That's all I need to know. You haven't given up on this porch the way Marcus gave up on being a decent man. And a quick note before we go on: the story ahead has fictional elements woven in, built not to deceive but to carry something true. If that's not for you, this is a fine place to step off. No hard feelings. But if you're staying, hold on, because what's coming is the part that changes everything. Every instinct told me to drive straight to her the moment I hung up that phone. I know how that sounds. Any father hearing "Dad, I miss you," in that particular broken glass voice would already be in the car. 40 years on the bench taught me something harder. Wanting to act and knowing when to act are two entirely different animals, and sometimes the most powerful thing a man can do is stay exactly where he is. I sat at my table a long time. I thought about what would happen if I showed up right then. Marcus, seeing my truck in the driveway, that flat, unbothered look sliding across his face, something smooth and final coming out of his mouth, and Rachel standing behind his shoulder doing the math in real time. If I let Dad in, it costs me Nora. She'd close the door, politely, apologetically, but she'd close it, because that's what years of careful dismantling look like from the inside. You don't walk out of it just because someone you love shows up. You've been told too many times the person at the door is the problem. So I stayed. I called Priscilla instead. She reached out, I told her. Didn't say anything outright, but she's reaching. That's significant, Priscilla said. But Walter, I want to be honest. A woman in her position is most vulnerable the moment she starts showing cracks. If she moves before she has support in place, he'll use it against her. I know. That's why I called you instead of driving over there. Smart. Here's what I can do. Full protection strategy ready to go. Financial documentation requirements. Emergency custody protocols. A motion for protective order if it comes to it. All of it sitting ready so when she's ready we move inside 24 hours. Do it. Whatever it costs. She still has to be the one to make the call. You know that. I know. I just need the door to open fast when she does. My phone rang 40 minutes later. A number I didn't recognize. Then it clicked: the county court administrator's office. Walter, said a voice warm and instantly familiar, even after 2 years. Carol Pemberton, senior clerk of the circuit court, the woman who'd run my chambers with quiet, terrifying efficiency for 18 years. You following the Harmon assignment? I've been following it. Then you might already guess what I'm calling to tell you. A pause, and in it I heard something that wasn't hesitation restraint, like she was working hard to keep her voice professional. The case has been assigned to you, Walter. The chief judge used the senior judge recall provision. Dockets overloaded, and your name came up. He signed the order this morning. Does Marcus Reed know who's been assigned? Posted to the docket 30 minutes ago. Public record, so not yet. But he will. I stood at my kitchen window looking at Dorothy's dogwood. Carol, is my robe still at the courthouse? A beat, and something in her voice that sounded like relief finally let loose after a long wait. I've kept it pressed, every month, for 2 years. I don't know why. Just felt like I should. My throat tightened. 2 years, and she'd been pressing that robe every month. I'll be there Thursday morning. I'll have courtroom 2 ready, she said then, quieter. It's good to have you back, Walter. I hadn't walked through those courthouse doors as a judge in 2 years. Same granite steps, same flag snapping over the entrance. I was the one who'd changed. Or maybe I'd just stopped pretending to be smaller than I was. Thursday, 2 days before trial, I went in through the side entrance at 7:15. My old badge still worked. Carol met me in the hallway outside my old chambers, silver-haired now, the same dark blazer she wore to every occasion that mattered. You look good, she said. I look old. You look like a judge, she said, which is a different thing entirely. The chambers smelled the same old paper, wood polish, something faintly metallic from the vents. My robe hung on the coat stand exactly where I'd left it, pressed and sharp. I crossed the room and touched the fabric. Every month, Carol said from the doorway. First Monday, I take it down, check it, press it if it needs it, hang it back up. Don't ask me why. I just knew you'd need it again. We met the Judicial Ethics Committee at 9. 3 senior judges, 1 administrative counsel, a court reporter. I laid it out before anyone could ask. I need to disclose a conflict. The defense attorney in the Harmon matter, Marcus Reed, is married to my daughter. I've had almost no contact with either of them in over a year. No financial interest in the outcome. The conflict is personal, not legal or financial. Judge Ellen Marsh, who'd sat longer than anyone in that room, leaned over her glasses. Most men in your position would recuse automatically, Walter. Most men in my position haven't spent 2 years watching Marcus Reed operate. I'm not recusing, because recusal is exactly what he'd want, and the code doesn't require it when the conflict's this attenuated. I'll disclose fully on the record at the opening of trial. Both parties get the explicit chance to object. If either does, I recuse immediately. No argument. They deliberated 20 minutes and approved it. Carol helped me into the robe, smoothed the shoulders, adjusted the collar the way she'd done 1,000 times. I looked at myself in the small chamber mirror, 68 years old, gray, lines that weren't there the last time I wore this, and underneath it, the same eyes that had looked down from that bench at thousands of cases trying, every single time, to see through the noise to what was actually true. Same robe, I said. Same man. Different war, Carol said quietly. I arrived at the courthouse at 6:45 that Monday morning, wearing the old brown jacket with the frayed cuff I'd been meaning to replace. Trousers gone shapeless at the knee, shoes clean but not shined, retired, unremarkable. I wanted Marcus to see exactly this version of me one more time. Bought coffee from the cart by the steps, found a spot near the entrance where the morning crowd moved around me like water around a stone. The town car pulled up while I was on my second sip. Marcus stepped out, first charcoal suit, silver tie, 2 young associates trailing behind carrying that particular pressurized look of people who work for a man who doesn't tolerate mistakes. He saw me. I watched the recalibration cross his face, that quick sorting of something beneath his notice. He changed direction. What are you doing here? Not a question. Not bothering to lower his voice either, with 3 lawyers nearby and a reporter with a notebook out by the glass doors. Morning coffee? I said, lifting the cup. Does Rachel know you're here? Rachel doesn't know I'm here. He looked at me the way you'd look at furniture left somewhere inconvenient, and something shifted the decision to perform, to make a point for whoever was watching. His shoulder swung into mine, sharp, deliberate. The coffee went first, arcing hot across my coat in a dark, spreading stain, the cup cracking against the granite. Careful, old man, he said, loud enough to carry. This isn't a park bench. Some of us have actual work today. Someone nearby laughed, uncertain. Marcus glanced at the stain spreading across my coat with something in his eyes that wasn't quite remorse and wasn't quite satisfaction. Sorry about that, he said, in a tone that meant the exact opposite. Maybe don't stand in the middle of the entrance looking lost. He straightened his cuff, looked me over once more, the coat, the stain, the whole picture, and said, You know your problem, Walter? You've spent your whole life standing in rooms where people like you don't belong, thinking that showing up is the same as mattering. He turned and walked up the steps, talking timelines with his associates, already 3 sentences into something else. I set the cracked cup on the edge of a planter. Hope you're still smiling in about 40 minutes, son, I said, quiet. Not for him, really. He didn't turn around. I waited until the steps cleared, then walked past the main doors to the unmarked side entrance the public never notices exists. My badge touched the reader. The lock clicked open. 40 minutes later, Marcus Reed walked into courtroom 2, and I was already there waiting. The silence before proceedings has a particular weight, not emptiness, held breath. Carol had the room running, exact. The gallery filled with reporters, law students, and in the front row, hands folded tight in her lap, a woman in a navy blouse, Denise Cole, Angela's sister, there in her place, since Angela couldn't be. I pushed through the door and walked to the bench. 50 conversations stopped at once, like a needle lifted off a record. All rise. The Honorable Walter Bishop presiding. Marcus was at the defense table, legal pad in front of him, talking to his associate. The associate looked up first. I watched the color drain out of his face in real time. He gripped Marcus's arm. Marcus waved him off with 2 fingers, the gesture of a man used to being interrupted at bad moments, then caught the look on the associate's face and slowly raised his eyes to the bench, to my robe, to the nameplate. 2 seconds. 3. 4. The pen dropped from his fingers and hit the table with a sound that seemed enormous in that room. His chair scraped back. Papers slid off the table edge, deposition excerpts, exhibit lists, 6 months of preparation spreading across the floor. He stood, mouth open, no words coming out. I kept my hands folded on the bench. Mr. Reed, before we proceed, this court is required to make a disclosure. My voice carried to the back wall without effort. The defense attorney in this matter is married to my daughter. This was disclosed to the Judicial Ethics Committee prior to today and authorized on the condition both parties are informed on the record and given the opportunity to object. I looked at him directly. Does the defense wish to object to this court's jurisdiction? Every eye in the room turned to Marcus. If he objected, he'd have to explain why, in front of every reporter with a notebook, describe what had happened on those steps 40 minutes earlier. His jaw worked. His knuckles went white against the table. He shook his head once, short and sharp, cutting off his own options before he could reconsider. I picked up the gavel. Be seated. Here's what Marcus expected when he sat back down. Payback. I could see it in the way he held himself, jaw set, eyes flicking to the door like he was already calculating an exit. What he got instead was the last thing he knew how to handle: fairness. Denise Cole's attorney, a sharp, composed woman named Yolanda Briggs, gave her opening in 10 clean minutes, no theatrics, just the facts of that Tuesday night. The blood alcohol level, the red light, the collision, Angela Cole dead at 31, her son airlifted with a fractured spine. Then Marcus stood, straightened his jacket, and gave a genuinely skilled opening, reasonable doubt, conflicting timelines, field sobriety testing under specific conditions, 3 appellate cases cited from memory. I'd never doubted he was good. 40 minutes in, Yolanda asked a leading question. Objection, Marcus said, on his feet before she finished. I checked. He was right. Sustained. 20 minutes later, he objected again on an improperly designated expert witness. Right again. Sustained. By lunch, I'd sustained 4 of his objections and overruled 2. A perfectly ordinary morning. But Marcus didn't see ordinary. He saw exactly what he wanted to see. I watched him in the hallway at recess through the glass, shoulders dropping, jaw unclenching, the tension of the morning melting into something familiar, the real smile, the one from that first dinner 6 years back, the one that never touched his eyes. The second day is where cases quietly break. Not in dramatic moments, but in the grinding procedural work nobody sees coming. I'd sat up past midnight going through Yolanda's exhibit log line by line, and around 1 in the morning, on page 11, I found it. Exhibit 9C, Toxicology and Accident Reconstruction Reports compiled in the 72 hours after the collision. Critical evidence. But the chain of custody form attached had a problem. The technician who transferred the reports had initialed the certification block instead of signing it. A small omission. Under the rules of evidence, authentication requires an unbroken chain, and initials aren't a signature. The chain was broken. The evidence couldn't be admitted, and I knew it before the morning even started. At 10:40, Yolanda moved to admit Exhibit 9C. Marcus was on his feet before she finished. Objection. Chain of custody. The certification signature is missing. The chain is broken. Every head in the room turned to me. I examined the log. He was right, and my job wasn't to want something else. My job was to apply the rule. Sustained. Exhibit 9C is excluded pending proper authentication. Counsel, you have 24 hours to cure the deficiency. The gallery exhaled, sharp and collective. Denise Cole pressed both hands flat against her thighs, knuckles gone the color of old bone. Marcus sat back down, not celebrating too careful for that, but something had eased in the way he occupied his chair. During recess, I heard him through the chamber door, telling his associate, the evidence issue changes their whole timeline. We push hard tomorrow, and by afternoon, tell me I'm wrong. The associate said, You're not wrong. He's being straight with me. I was worried for nothing. She didn't call to ask permission. She just showed up, the way she used to at 7 years old when she'd already made up her mind and saw no point discussing it first. I found out the same moment Marcus did, when Yolanda stood at 9:02 on day 3. Your Honor, the plaintiff moves to add 1 supplemental witness. Motion and affidavit filed with the clerk at 7:50 this morning. Marcus was up instantly. Objection, Your Honor. The disclosure deadline passed 2 weeks ago. This is a last minute. Mr. Reed, I've reviewed the motion and the supporting affidavit. This witness has first-hand knowledge of conduct directly relevant to this proceeding, not available to the plaintiff through standard discovery. The motion is granted. Your Honor, the defense has had no opportunity to. You'll have the opportunity to cross-examine. Counsel, call your witness. Yolanda turned toward the doors. The plaintiff calls Rachel Reed. The doors opened, and my daughter walked into the room. Beneath the bench, where nobody could see, my hands pressed flat against my thighs, and I breathed through it the way I'd learned to hold myself together when something hits too hard and too fast. She wore a gray blouse, simple, nothing that announced itself, hair pulled back, walking the careful, deliberate step of someone who's decided something is going to cost her and has decided to pay it anyway. She didn't look at Marcus. She didn't look at me. She kept her eyes on Yolanda and walked to the stand like that was the only thing left in the room. I made myself look at Marcus. The color dropped out of his face all at once. His hand hovered an inch above his legal pad, not quite touching it. His associate whispered something urgent near his ear. He didn't respond. He was staring at his wife. Miss Reed, can you describe your relationship to the defendant? Marcus Reed is my husband, Rachel said, steady as a floorboard. We're currently separated. A ripple through the gallery. Approximately 2 weeks before this trial began, did you discover something on your husband's laptop? I did. I was printing something for a piano lesson and saw an email thread already open on the screen. Can you describe it? It was between my husband and a private investigation firm. The instructions were to find negative information on Angela Cole, driving record, finances, personal history. When the investigator responded her record was clean, my husband wrote back. She stopped, took one breath. He wrote, and I'm quoting from memory, "Then, we build context. People believe what they read. Make it sound credible." The gallery went very still. Denise Cole gripped the armrests of her chair, mouth pressed into a white line, staring at Rachel with an expression that was part shock and part something rarer, the look of a woman just told, publicly, on the record, that the campaign against her dead sister's memory had been deliberate, planned, and paid for. Marcus cross-examined for 30-some minutes, methodical, never raising his voice, asked about the separation, her motives, why she hadn't gone to police first. I brought it to the people who could use it, Rachel said. Yes. He tried the draft memo angle, the hypothetical language angle. Rachel's eyes never left his face. He wrote, "Make it sound credible. That's not hypothetical. That's an instruction." By the time he sat down, something had shifted in the room. The slow tip of a table finding the angle where it stops being stable. On redirect, Yolanda asked if Rachel had brought anything else. Rachel reached into her bag, steadier than she had any right to be, and set a small item on the stand. A USB drive, black, unmarked. This is a copy of the dashcam footage from Gregory Harmon's truck the night of the accident. It was given to me by a woman named Denise Marsh, who held a written service authorization to detail Mr. Harmon's vehicles. Before the truck was sent for what Mr. Harmon called a technical inspection. While performing her contracted duties, she connected a personal device to the dashcam port and copied the footage. The gallery erupted. Carol's gavel came down once, sharp. Marcus was on his feet. Objection, chain of custody. Authentication. This wasn't disclosed through proper channels. Your Honor, Yolanda said, already moving. The plaintiff submits a sworn affidavit from Miss File, Marsh, detailing the exact process and timestamp. A certification from an independent forensics examiner confirming the footage is unaltered, and documentation showing Miss Marsh contacted plaintiff's counsel 48 hours ago after seeing the trial coverage. Unlike Exhibit 9C, every link in this chain is fully executed and dated. I took the folder, read every page. Clean affidavit, thorough certification, timestamp matching the night of the accident down to the second. Enough. The court accepts the evidence. We'll take a 30-minute recess before viewing the footage. The footage ran 31 minutes. The first 5 told the story everyone already knew: the road, the speed, the light, the collision, sudden and total. Denise Cole made one small involuntary sound and pressed her fist to her mouth. Minute 4. The truck stopped, engine running, Harmon breathing fast and ragged through the interior microphone. Minute 5. His voice cracking. Oh God. Oh God. Then the Bluetooth connected. 1 ring. 2. And Marcus's voice filled the courtroom, calm, immediate. The voice of a man who'd been waiting for this exact call. Listen to me carefully. Don't get out of the vehicle. Don't hand your phone to anyone. Don't consent to any data transfer from this truck's systems. When police arrive, you say 2 things. You need medical attention, and you need your attorney present before any questioning. Understand me? Marcus, I think she's not moving. I think she's Gregory. Do exactly what I said. I'm on my way. The call ended. On screen, the first emergency lights appeared in the distance. Still 2 minutes out. Harmon sat there. Didn't get out. Didn't call 911. Didn't move toward the woman dying in the road. Just waited for his lawyer. The room didn't erupt. It went quieter than that. And worse, a collective exhale. The sound of 50 people releasing something they'd been holding, followed by a stillness so complete I could hear the ventilation humming overhead. When it ended, I leaned forward. Let the record show this footage raises significant questions of obstruction of justice and conduct unbecoming an officer of the court under the state disciplinary rules. These matters will be referred to the bar and the district attorney's office for separate review. The gavel came down. The jury will now deliberate on the question of liability. Denise Cole stood, legs unsteady, her attorney catching her elbow, and something moved through her face that wasn't relief or victory, just the slow, exhausted arrival of finally being believed. The jury was out 2 hours and 40 minutes. When they came back, the forewoman delivered it in 4 words. We find for the plaintiff. I read the judgment into the record, referred Marcus's conduct to the bar and the DA's office, removed my robe, and hung it on the hook for the last time. I was halfway down the corridor when he caught up to me. Jacket open, tie loose, the wreckage of a man who'd built his whole life on never losing. You planned this, all of it. I ruled correctly, I said. Every objection you won. You won because you were right about the law. That's what fair looks like. You never recognized it because you spent so long working around it instead of inside it. You destroyed me, my career, everything. No, I said, keeping my voice level. You made every choice that brought you here. I just made sure you made them in front of the right people. His eyes were bright, desperate. Say something. Fight back. You don't get to just walk away. I looked at him one last time at the man who'd told a retired old widower to go home that morning on those steps. The courtroom judged what you did, I said. Life will judge who you chose to be. I turned and didn't look back. Rachel was waiting at the end of the hallway, Nora beside her, a small hand wrapped in her mother's. Rachel took 2 steps and closed the rest of the distance herself, put her arms around me without a word, and I felt her exhale, long and shaking, finally let go. Dad, she said, just that. Then a small hand found mine. Grandpa, Nora said, looking up, let's go home. The 3 of us walked out through those courthouse doors into an October afternoon, Nora in the middle, one hand in mine, one in her mother's. Rachel signed the divorce papers in December. On Christmas Eve, she and Nora came to the house, smoked pork shoulder, buttermilk pie. Nora telling me about the cat she'd named in her head. Rachel laughing, really laughing, for the first time in years. I set a card up next to Dorothy's photograph on the mantel. In Rachel's handwriting, to the finest judge I've ever known. Love, Rachel and Nora. She's home, sweetheart, I said to Dorothy's picture. They're both home. I spent 40 years deciding right from wrong for people I'd never meet. The hardest case of my life turned out to be the one sitting at my kitchen table, laughing at something I didn't quite catch, calling me Grandpa like it was the most natural thing in the world, which I suppose it always was. If there's one thing this stretch of road taught me, it's this. Silence isn't patience. Staying quiet while someone you love is being hurt isn't wisdom. That's fear, wearing wisdom's coat. I wore that coat 6 years too many. Don't make my mistake. Don't wait for the damage to finish before you speak up. Don't tell yourself distance is protection when it's really just easier than the fight. The people who love you don't need you perfect. They need you present. I believe that assignment landed in my hands at exactly the right hour, not a day early, not a day late. I wasn't chasing revenge. I was chasing justice for my daughter and for a woman named Angela Cole who deserved someone to believe her sister. Those are different things, and the difference matters more than most people realize. The law can return what was taken. Only love brings back who was lost. I got my daughter back. That verdict that was the easy part. If anything in this story felt familiar, felt like somebody you know or something you've lived, tell me in the comments below. Type A if you think I did right. Type B if you'd have handled it differently. Every answer matters to me. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you haven't yet, this is your sign to stay a while. Thank you for sitting with me through the whole thing. It means more than I can say. One last note. The stories here carry fictional elements, built for reflection and to hold a truth worth keeping. If that's not for you, no hard feelings. Choose what feeds you. But if you're staying, there's a lot more of this porch left to see. See you next time.